I will introduce it. If you all will remind me how to say it, it's La N.
Yes, just like the letter N, literally. La N.
Is that right, professional?
That's right. La N.
Okay. Okay. We are reviewing the movie La Haine, a 1995 black and white film about 3 youth in France who live in the projects, one being a Jewish kid, one being a black kid, and one being an Arabic. No.
Yeah, North African Arab background.
And it begins at the during the riots that has caused one also young teenage boy to have been beaten badly by the police and is hospitalized. And it follows these 3 friends of his on a single day as they kind of go through self-discovery, I would say, and some exploration about their situation in life and their situation in current politics, and just yes, that's all I got. Period.
I will say, I think it's flipped. Weren't the riots because this kid was in custody and beaten by the cops?
Yes.
Very similar, and I'm pretty sure inspired by like the Rodney King beatings that happened a few years before this real time.
It wasn't.
No.
I just read this. This movie apparently was specifically started during riots that were happening. It was a protest that was happening. Somebody with a computer do this really fast.
I got you. 1993.
Yes.
Yeah, a 17-year-old immigrant boy was killed by police. He was killed while in police custody. Accidentally shot in the head while he was handcuffed inside the police station. No,
never mind. Continue, because it might be completely off topic. So now I'm gonna check something. Sorry.
Anyway, so that sparked like massive protests throughout these. They call these neighborhoods or these suburbs. They call them banlieues, which I think literally translates to without bathrooms. I'm joking. That was a joke, guys.
Okay, we're not in the mood.
We're not in the mood, Clayton. Literally, you just finished saying a kid accidentally in real life gets shot while he's in handcuffs.
Yes.
And now we're in bathroomless projects.
And so the writer-director of this movie, and out of respect to the beautiful language of the French, I'm not even going to try the French pronunciation of any of these names. I'm just going to say them as I would say them, with all apologies to the actual people. The director, Mathieu Kassovitz, who wrote this movie, he started writing the script for this movie that day, the day that happened. He was an active participant in the protests. And the protests had been going on since for a while. In 1986, there was an incident of police brutality that sparked protests. And in just kind of that 6-year period, there were over 300 documented instances of police brutality. And I'm not sure if they all resulted in deaths, but they were.
But it was like negligent abuse of civilians by police, and it was very, very lightly handled by any kind of authority for repercussions for mishandling. And so,
in fact, the term that was publicly used for all of these instances translates to slip-ups. They called them slip-ups. There were over 300 of these slip-ups happened in this 6-year span.
at the end of some of these slip ups, and that seems awful, you know.
Yeah.
But so he was inspired at one of these protests and started writing the script that night after he participated in that. But you're not wrong though, Morgan, is that there were a lot of riots going on globally about highlighting police brutality and just justice for those marginalized people who are abused by these systems that are set up to protect people, but not if you're part of the demographic or from the neighborhoods that apparently don't warrant protection, kind of thing. So
I for one am so glad that, you know, that's all a part of history. You know, it's all behind us now. Yeah. It was shocking, like how old this movie is, and it's like it could have been made this year.
The storytelling style was very challenging for me. I was not in a good mood when I watched this movie, and just the like teenage boy style, like constant back and forth talking about who knows what, that was challenging for me. And so I'm not sure my reaction went very deep. It was just like, I'm annoyed with these kids. And I just sound like such a princess to say that, but I struggled with that. And there was just like constant noise, which is maybe you should be feeling that. So that was my primary reaction, just like, okay, another princess response is like feeling annoyed or uncomfortable. And I think that's so distant from my life and experience that just because I'm grumpy and it annoyed me, like I sound like such a horrible person, but that really was my primary response.
I liked the exchanges between them. I liked the noise and the chaos of the kind of how it was filmed, because it felt very, very part of their kind of chaotic neighborhood. You know, like everyone's talking over everyone, and like so I like that kind of visualization and representation, and like it impressed me how they were able to film that where like it didn't stand out. You know, like it just kind of like felt like you were actually like looking in on these kids, or they're not even like that. Those like they're not that young. They're not kids. I just feel like an old lady.
I think they were teenagers. Like the characters in the movie were like supposed to be 16-ish years old.
Guessing like 19 somewhere in there.
Okay, then how did Hubert have a gym?
Ooh.
His gym.
Yeah.
So like they're very much young adult in my mind, but it's just like they seem like they're older than just 16.
Well, he had he had also been in the military, but I actually think that he's older than Saeed and Vince.
Yeah, and then they have their younger siblings that are in school still, so they're at least like aged
They're
out.
right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I liked the filming style. I did find it very stressful, and I'm sure that was on purpose. I actually got a feeling like kind of when I was watching, I can't remember if it's Good Time or Good Times with an S.
Singular. Good Time.
Like that Good Time where like I'm watching these kids, and you know they make you be invested in their story. Of course, it's that storytelling, but they just like the whole like this. It's like in Good Time where he just kept making bad decision after bad decision, and I'm just like so stressed. But in this time it's not just, you know, a bank robber who you are like following. It's this young man who is trying to get out of the hood, and like this rapscallion who is just a menace. He's a pest, but you know, not a terrible person. And you have this guy who just like this hair trigger like aggressive guy who just like keeps escalating things, and then they all take turns escalating things, and I was just like, that part was really hard to watch specifically. But those are my two, I guess, like off the bat feelings.
Yeah, I thought the lack of control feeling for me was also amplified by just the randomness. Like when they go to Snoopy's apartment, and then as they're leaving, Vince is like lagging behind the group, and so like he's not out on the street when those cops are there. Like just so happens that he was behind them, and that like was to his benefit. I feel like there are a few times throughout the movie where the timing just like really mattered, and like you just happen to be here and then you suffer at the hands of the police. Like there's so much, you don't have control, just like randomly this it's gonna happen to you.
Like luck of the draw kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which sucks, because like as humans, don't we hate feeling like our lives are just at the mercy of luck of the draw? And yet, yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. I had posed the question, what was your favorite scene? Because I felt as though every instance, and like there were a lot of different scenes, because it wasn't just like one continuous thing. They just show up in different places. And so in my mind, I counted them all as scenes. And they all had like mini stories and or philosophical kind of quandaries that they explored in each of them. And for me, I could not get the scene of the toilet, the guy who comes out of the stall and tells the story. And like, I can't even, I don't know, what did you guys, not to put you guys on the spot, because I have been kicking this one around, but like, what did you guys actually think that story freaking meant? Like, it was that one, and the whole Saeed's like obsession with like, how did they get the car in the building? And they just kept ringing in my mind as to like, I kind of wanted to pause and, you know, like really dwell on each of those things for a little bit, but the car less so, but I mean, the bathroom. So I kind of wanted to know your impressions. And then I started thinking, I wonder what your guys' favorite scenes are from the movie.
So I interpreted that scene to mean that you should always take a shit when you have the opportunity, because otherwise you might get left behind on the train going to the gulag and you might freeze to death. So, I mean, it seems pretty cut and dried to me.
That's really fascinating how you came to that. It's like,
I mean,
anybody else?
it's honestly, it's applicable for all of us. That's good practical life advice.
Poop when you have the chance.
Yeah. I just love Saeed's reaction. Why did he tell us that? Why did he tell us that?
I think the one other very superficial level old man thought that I had is when he tells that story, he so successfully de-escalates the situation. Like he just comes out, calms the kids down, and gets out of there. And then they show that other man like, what's going on? I don't know how to get out of here. But he just knows how to survive it. He's like, hey guys, here's a story. Bye. See you later.
Bye.
Au revoir. Au revoir. Au revoir.
It was good. The detainment scene was really disturbing.
Yeah.
And then after they were released, like their concern was that they missed the last train. That was.
I thought that was that whole segment of the story was interesting, because it's like they got arrested basically just for being from their neighborhood and being in the Paris city center. Like they hadn't done anything really. They went to visit a guy in his apartment. And yeah, that, you know, didn't go well, but they didn't, like, no part of that was criminal. Throughout the entire movie, Vince, you know, he's the real hothead. He's the guy with major anger issues. He's the guy who's like really going to show these cops. He's the only one of the three who actually participated in the riot before. And throughout the movie, he's the one who avoids consequences the most. It's the white guy who avoids the consequences, even though he's the primary provocateur, and his friends are actually trying to like restrain him, calm him down, keep him from doing something stupid. It's like they understand the consequences a lot better. They understand that
they have consequences, and he will likely avoid them.
Well, they even say that when they're trying to get into the Snoopy's apartment. They're like, "Come on, Whitey, like your face in the camera."
You be the face of the
exactly. Well, and then ultimately, though, isn't that kind of the twofold? The message about how those that look more like the people who are the oppressors, right? They have the luxury to be like riled up in that way and be all, like you're saying, just the most violent of them all in terms of like intention and, all of that. But then ultimately though, you still, no matter what you look like and or where you are in that hierarchy, you still can't escape your situation.
So for the end scene, did you guys pick up on how the cops like trapped them essentially? The continued harassment of like where they are set up in this situation and where they have like one choice, to take the train at the end, and as soon as even when they do that action, that non-criminal action where they had no choice to take because they were set up this way, they do have that continued harassment, and that's pursual by the police in this film. And it's just so frustrating. It's not so to me it's not so much that like, I don't know, because we keep saying trap, and then I was also watching something before this that where they're like literally talking about like a mouse in a glue trap and how they're trapped in the situation. So like now I'm trying to conflate the two, but it's not so much of a trap as much as it is just for these people to be just like shooting fish in a barrel, like it's just cruel. Yeah. And like even like beyond situation, it's just, I mean, this is also why I've got too many feelings on this, or just like cannot clearly express anything. I'm just frustrated.
Well, the shooting fish in the barrel, that does really feel like the scene where Hubert and Saeed are at the police station, and there's just like zero reason for that, for them being like, and like that young cop in training is just sitting there like, what are these?
What the fuck is going on? Man. It is. There were definitely a lot of frustrating like parts of the movie, and which I think is part of why it is so timeless, is that like the frustrating societal and political things that are still present in our society is interspersed by like these very teenage and youthful banterings and thought processes, like I've got a date and you screwed up my hair, and these the posturing of young adolescent guys that want to be badass or whatever, and all of those things are still very present all over. And so that makes it that much more real, because as much as the funnier, kind of more ridiculous things are real still, so are the really dark, negative, and scary things in the film that are frustrating and like, kind of suffocating. That's still out there too. I wonder how French people felt watching this film and how they feel now versus how Americans feel watching this film and felt then too. How much of it is similar? Is it more, or do we project some of what we are experiencing and our feelings and thoughts, onto a situation that might be completely different for the French people that live through. I don't know. It's just
So when this movie came out, it was, well, first off, this movie had a hard time getting made. Like the National French Film Institute, I'm not exactly sure how that works, but they didn't want to finance the movie. I guess they tried to film in, or 7 different banlieues rejected their filming, like wouldn't let them film this movie there.
Mm.
And then the one they did film in, they actually used a lot of local residents, in the movie. And when the movie came out, it was like a big cultural moment in France in a lot of ways. The prime minister like held a private screening for his cabinet. I think it won some pretty big award at Cannes. And at Cannes, the police guard, who are supposed to be event security for the crew, the cast and crew that were there, like they turned their backs on the cast and crew, like as a gesture of protest against this movie, because they considered the movie to be anti-police. But this movie sparked kind of a genre, or not genre so much as like it inspired more movies about these banlieues, about life in these neighborhoods, from a variety of different perspectives, and with a variety of different tones. But it also had kind of like, I think, like what we would consider kind of a poverty porn effect or response. And ultimately, everybody treated it like a big eye-opening, awakening, revelatory moment. And nothing ever changed. So this movie's been referenced a lot over the years. When I was doing some research trying to read about it, I could find 15 years after La Haine, like how do things look now? 20 years, 25 years. It's as relevant as ever. Which is what the movie's saying, in the opening scene and the closing scene, with the narrator telling that joke about the man who fell off the skyscraper, and as he was falling, with every floor he passed, he'd say, "So far, so good. So far, so good." And the point of the story is that it's not about the fall; it's about the landing. And I think we have a lot of people that just keep saying, "So far, so good," without ever thinking about when we're going to stop falling. And I think that's been the consistent consensus in the French reception of this movie.
That reminds me of a conversation that we had after, I don't know, one of the other films, and we were talking about progress, and like, if you look, I don't know, that just makes me think of that when you talk about, so far so good, so far so good. Obviously though, the joke ends, the unspoken end of the joke is the fact that he's gonna go splat at the end because he's fallen off a skyscraper. But in the context of our society and our lives and the progress, social progress, or just progress in historical progress, is that true that we haven't changed at all? I don't know. It definitely, you're talking about the articles, because I definitely perused a couple of those really briefly and saw all those headlines like 15 years, 20 years and all that. but it does make me think, is it true that we haven't progressed any further beyond, you know, when this movie was made at all? I can't speak for France, but
I bet, well, France has its own long, unique history of protests, but we all know of the global response to, like, the killing of George Floyd and how that did spark literal worldwide protests, and that is not because everyone is sad that this one man died, but I'm sure many were, but it's this systematic, like, specifically in this case, like, police brutality that, I meant, if there was such a strong showing in France, it probably still remains within their society as well. So I meant, and in that case, I don't know that any progress has been made, or if progress has been made, like, at some point, if it reverted back to, you know, the levels it is now, where, like, people, you know, are consistently out, you know, trying to be heard that, hey, this isn't good enough. So when we had that conversation about progress, I've been thinking about it a lot. I think it's still pretty much the same. Like, what I had said was, and I stand by it, is that it's that our progress is not a straight line. Of course, it's from my perspective, at least, I see it kind of like, now I don't even remember if I said this in the conversation, but it's like a pool. Like, it's collected, you know? So some things have gotten better and some things have not. It's all in one big pool of progress, and whether or not we're any better off than we were before, who knows, basically. I will say the things that gave my heart a break in this movie is, as sad as the situation was, like, during the interrogation, the only time that Saeed or Hubert, like, reacted is when the cops were going after the other, you know? And I was just like, they stick up for their friends. It was heartening to see, especially because this movie could have very easily been misconstrued as, you know, these are hood rats who, you know nothing more than violence or, you know, reactionary tactics or whatever. But just kind of like that's one of the reasons too why I really like the scenes, like, throughout the neighborhood, even if they were kind of like tinged with what was happening, it was still like you got a sense of community and of camaraderie and of, like, people who stick up for each other, which I always appreciate that in movies, period. But, like, in movies like this, it's a balm for kind of the harder parts to watch.
Well, and people make it so easy to, you know, when you hear about people in kind of worse off neighborhoods and there's somebody who gets killed by police or something, well, it's like, did he deserve it? But it's like there's that projection of, like, well, from this place, that person could not have been a good person. Like, that's the natural, like, way that things are, I don't want to say that it's portrayed that way. It's like there's that subtle implication that's just laced around the whole story all the time that kind of lead your subconscious to ask those questions and doubt whether this was wrongful or not. And the saddest part of this movie was actually, to me, the progression of Hubert, because the whole entire time he wants to get out. He wants to get out. He doesn't want to be in that neighborhood anymore. He's trying to talk his friend off the ledge of violence and mania and all this and all that. And at the end, with the skinhead, you know, even he, despite all of his, like, don't buy into this violence, don't buy into all of that, like, for him though, there is a breaking point also, where it's the only good skinhead is a dead one, you know, and that's the only time he was ready to allow his friend to, like, lash out his vengeance and feelings and just go ahead and shoot him. And then ultimately, when his friends are in danger, because of the circumstance, because of the police that were there to be menacing, because of things that were completely out of his control. This kid who went through the military, started his own business, I think did a little drug running on the side, but maybe, but still, like, clearly was bright and had goals of being not in that world, to defend his friend. Then what happens?
Mm-hmm.
It's so disheartening, because you're just like, even Hubert, who was like the rock of no, hate only begets more hate. We got to be better than that.
De-escalation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would actually disagree with you on one element of that. Like, I don't think his character changed at all up until, I don't think it changed at all during the movie. And I think the scene with the skinhead, he didn't like change anything. I think he was egging Vince on to prove to Vince that Vince is not the violent guy that Vince thinks he is.
He's
Like, I don't think for one moment Hubert actually thought that Vince would
pull the trigger.
Yeah, would pull the trigger. I think he was egging him on to prove the point that Vince was not going to pull the trigger. In it.
And it's not just
that is what happened.
Or like, we're not holding you back anymore, so do it. You say we've been holding you back this whole time, so do it.
That's a good point.
So I don't know if you guys saw this, but the director, Mathieu Kassovitz, he was the skinhead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
Who
you
got
saw
beat?
that or not.
Yeah.
He also was the love interest in Amelie. Like, he played.
Was he?
What's his name?
Photo booth man.
Yeah, Nino or something.
Yeah, Nino can comprendre.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
Well, okay. So with that, shall we go around and see if we would ever screen this?
Yeah, I absolutely would screen this. It's obviously as relevant now as it was in 1995, and there's something about there's a an extra level of urgency, I think, that comes from this being a movie from 1995. And it's just a really good movie. Like, I really appreciated the story and the way it was made.
I'm on the fence because I worry about this being watched the wrong way. And I'm tend to be cautious that way. But also because of kind of like a point that you brought up earlier, Clayton, it's like, you watch a movie like this and people are so affected by it, but like, it's still like, 5, 10, 20, 25 years later, and nothing has changed. And so it's like, I feel sometimes the problem with movies like this is people watch this and they have such a strong reaction that they think that this is the activism that they need to do. Or, like, this is the limit of what they need to do. It's like, I saw this and I was affected by it. It's like, great. So what are you doing about it? So I'm apprehensive because of that also. Where on one hand, though, it's like not like everyone has to go out and do something after they, watch a film. But this kind of film where like it is so relevant and people are like, things need to change, and then it seems to stop at this step. So I don't know. I would have to think about it more like that. I do think this is a very good movie, and depending on how we handled the conversation around it, I think it would be good. But I'm sensitive. So that's why I am ambivalent. Because there's nothing more heartbreaking than like seeing a movie, I'm tearing up already, than seeing a movie, you know, like that's supposed to have such a strong message, and then like having to watch people either take the wrong message or to, I don't know, it's just that it's so hard for me to watch. So like that's my sensitivity. On the fence, but very good film, so I don't know. Yes, and then also parentheses, no, question mark.
Period.
Yeah.
I feel some confusion about it myself. I feel like I didn't contribute well because my lens was from just being in a bad mood when I watched it. But I feel like for me, the confusion more is like, I don't actually feel that it's more impactful that it was from 1995. For me, I'm concerned that like that it came from the past, from 95, and then that it's in France. Like somehow it feels like distracting. Like if the point of this movie is to like bring up social justice, racial inequity, or dealing with our shit in America, for me, I'm like, I can't tell if like watching this happen in another context makes you aware and do something here, or if it just like distracts from it. Like this was something that happened, and it happened in France, and but I can appreciate the quality of the film. I don't know, I just feel like there has to be something even more relevant, which maybe is not a valid criticism. So I don't have a good answer. I'm just kind of confused of what I feel.
I'll say my criticism was all very subjective also. So who's to say anything's valid? Not me.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we have 1 yes and 2 maybes. So.
For me, it would be a yes. I would like for us as a team, if we were to screen this, to determine the best way to approach it and in what venue and how, for sure. But I think the quality of the film itself is in itself justification to have it have a spot in our events.
Anyway.
All right, guys.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Night.